Hello again, I am Blunty, and one of the things people new to Monster Hunter tend to struggle with is how cluttered the UI can be. You'll notice there is no UI at all on my screen at the moment. But yeah, by default, the UI is pretty intrusive by comparison to a lot of other games out there. But it doesn't have to be. A lot of people don't notice in the menu here, just on the first tab of the menus in Wilds, right here is the HUD menu. If you go in here, you can find out you can turn on or off each and every single last element individually and discreetly of the HUD. So you can get rid of anything you don't like. For example, scout fly announcements that are normally on the left side middle of the screen that tell you what stuff is in the area, what kind of, mantle bugs and crap like that. I don't need that. I find that cluttering, so I tend to turn that off. Health gauge you're probably going to want on. By default, they're pretty big. I've been using small. Stamina gauge, same thing. Small there as well, I quite like. Melee weapon sharpness, you might want that at large. It's a good idea to keep an eye on that. It's a little bit easy to do when it is large. But if you're sort of way more familiar with the game, and you know what to look for sort of at a glance better, it's done small as well. I mean, all this is personal taste type stuff, of course. Weapon information tends to be pretty important too. You might want to consider leaving that on large, even if everything else is on small, because it does, for a lot of the weapons, communicate some very important data about charge states and what the weapon is doing. Because a lot of the weapons have management involved in them, charge levels and stuff like that. So again, think carefully about how visible you want that one. Party info, that's your party. That's the multiplayer stuff. So you can keep an eye on the names and the health of the people in your party. It's probably useful to have that on, but not absolutely necessary if you're playing with people you're familiar with and you can trust and you'd have to keep an eye on. And if you're not running a build that has party healing capabilities in it, because if you're aware, there is stuff called wide range in this game, which means if you use a potion, it gets applied to everybody to various extents, depending on how strong or how many levels of wide range you've got on your character and stuff like that. That's a little bit outside this video, but yeah, that's the reason sort of that sort of stuff is good to keep an eye on. But again, I like it at small, so it's there, but it's relatively unobtrusive. Scout fly announcements already talked about. Minimap, very useful to have on, and when you're starting out, large is probably a good idea, so you can sort of really keep an eye on things. But again, once you're more used to the game, you can put it on small because you're more able to see what's going on that map at just a glance once you're more used to things. Environmental clock, not really all that necessary usually. Hunts do have timers on them, and as you get into the late game, you might find there are special hunts with shorter timers, but usually a default hunt is like 50 minutes. And if you're struggling to get a hunt done in 50 minutes, you've got bigger problems than watching the clock. So you don't really need that one on. Target monster down here, that's just next to your map there, so you can see what monster you're actually targeting for your tracking and whatnot. Button guide, again, very, very useful for newbies starting out. That is your weapon button guide. That'll tell you what buttons do what on your weapon at any one point, depending on what mode your weapon is in, if you've got a multi-modal weapon and stuff like that. Again, not essential if once you get more used to the game and you sort of your weapon is in your muscle memory. I still like to have it on because I tend to switch weapons and, sometimes I get myself ass backwards. So it's nice to be able to just glance up there for a quick reminder, especially in a new Monster Hunter game where some of the weapon mechanics have changed and some of the combos have changed. It's useful to have that stuff up there usually. I will eventually turn it off though. Objectives, very, very useful to have on. So you know what you're doing, when you're doing it, and why you're doing it. Chat notifications. Obvious, that's your chat. If you're in a public lobby and lots of people are spamming chat, you might want to turn that off. Handy to have on small though. Slinger display, that's pretty much something you want on. Again, if you're starting out, you want it on large, so it's very, very visible. If you're more familiar with the game already, small. That is the ammunition in your slinger. That's your little crossbow type thing you've got on your left arm. Very vital equipment that you'll need to use very smartly and carefully. So it's really, really nice to have that down there so you know exactly what is loaded in, what kind of ammo you've picked up and is currently loaded in to your slinger. Because if you accidentally fire a poop bomb when you meant to fire a flash bomb, you're going to have a bad day. Your monster's going to run away from the poopy smell instead of being stunned and blinded by the flash. And yeah, that can significantly annoy your teammates or just make your hunt less efficient. Item bar, very, very useful to have on. Again, another one you want on large if you're learning. I can pop down on small once you get used to the game. Again, because you just need to have a quick glance at what's down there. We'll have a look at that one once we come away from this menu, what that deal is. Ammo and coatings, if you're using a ranged weapon, this is very useful to have. Again, put it on large if you're starting out. I got down to small to keep it more tidy once you get used to things. And then you've got your custom radial menu, is the popover. It's not ever present, but it's the popover that comes up when you press the button to trigger the radio menu. I would leave that on default. No real need to go to large, even if you're a newbie, because it is pretty large by default. And I find small a little bit too small if you have a customized radio menu like I do that has multiple items on it instead of just the 4, which are default. But yeah, make your own choice on that, whatever works for you. And your keyboard shortcuts, if you're on a keyboard and mouse, obviously those will come up on the screen there when you're doing that stuff. Interactables, again, keep it on small. You really don't need that big. Even if you're a newbie, you don't really need that big. That'll just, tell you what's what. And this is your characters and Palico's nameplates as well. Useful to have that on small, but you can turn it off if you find it visually cluttering. But if you're playing in a team, I like to keep an eye on who's where and doing what, just so we can coordinate a little bit better. So that makes it easy to do at a glance. So let's come back out here. And when I was talking about that radio menu, that's right there. So it's small by default, but as soon as you interact with it by using your right stick, it'll grow larger. As you can see there, I've got a reasonably complicated one. They're very, very customizable, these radio wheels, and I'll probably do a separate video on these, how to sort this out and how to sort your inventory out. But yeah, really handy to customize this from default to add a few more options. I always like to have a little sticker or emote at the top corner there, just to say, at the end of a hunt, hey, nice work, I'll do my little end of hunt dance. But yeah, we'll talk about more of that later, but whoops. And down to the bottom left corner there, you can see that's your action bar. As you can see there, once you get used to those icons, you don't really need them to be big. That's the small size there. But again, if you're new and you're not used to sort of seeing this stuff at a glance, or you're feeling like you need to read the description of these icons while you're learning, it's probably better to have that at the default or even large size, so you can more quickly read what's going on down there. Switching that stuff is pretty important a lot of times. As you keep playing the game, and you'll learn sort of what UI stuff you find most useful and what you find just cluttery. But this is the way I usually have mine. As you can see, relatively uncluttered. I got some essential information up there, and again up the top right hand corner, my weapon guide, my basic buttons. I don't really need that at this point, but again, it's just nice to have it up there while you're learning a new game and switching weapons and crap like that. So hopefully you found that all useful. But yeah, it's kind of a learn by doing thing for the most part. The stuff that's on by default is usually relatively important, but there's a couple of things you can turn down. The scout flies, for example. And you might want to shrink down the size of some stuff, or even increase the size of some stuff while you're learning. So now that you know that's there, you can, make up your own mind on how you want to handle that. Thanks for watching. I am Blotty, and I will catch you next time. Thank you, as always, to the patrons.